Hello and welcome to Global News Today, bringing you exclusive insights and fresh perspectives from leading experts and influential decision makers every weekday here on Al Arabiya News. I'm Tom Burges Watson. Coming up on the programme, as Israel and Hamas make a final push for a ceasefire and hostage release deal, the agonising wait for news of the hostages continues. Coming up, we'll have the latest on those talks, plus we'll be speaking to one woman whose cousin remains a hostage. Despite reports of progress on those talks, Israel has intensified its shelling on Gaza, where at least 62 people are reported to have been killed during the last 24 hours. Lebanon's new Prime Minister, Nawaf Salam, calls for a new chapter without foreign interference. He says he's reaching out across the political spectrum to form a government to get the country back on track. And the authorities in Los Angeles County hand down lengthy prison sentences to those caught looting in areas that have been evacuated. This as a result of the massive wildfires in the area. Hello and welcome to the programme. After nearly a year and a half since the war in Gaza began, a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas looks like it could be imminent. Well, Israeli officials initially announced that Hamas had approved a deal for a formal announcement, but the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has since denied that claim. That's according to the Times of Israel. Well, as well as pausing the war in Gaza, which has been raging for 15 months, a ceasefire would also result in an exchange of hostages and Palestinian prisoners between the two sides. Well, despite reports of progress on this deal, Israel has meanwhile intensified its shelling on the densely populated Gaza Strip, killing at least 62 people in the space of just 24 hours. Well, perhaps nobody is more keen to hear the outcome of these negotiations than the loved ones of the hostages who are being held by Hamas. Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Waxman Bakshi, who is an Israeli-Canadian YouTuber whose cousin has been held hostage by Hamas. She joins us now from Tel Aviv. Ashley, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. A truce in Gaza would, of course, lead to the release of hostages. And I'm guessing that for you and your family, this long, drawn-out wait for a conclusion to the talks must be absolute agony.
It is. We've been through an emotional roller coaster, obviously since October 7th. We've been very close to a deal before, and then it's fallen through. And often the media has said that we're close to a deal when in reality we weren't close to a deal. And so until we see them home, until I see Agam home, I won't believe it until I see it.
Now, your cousin Agam, who you just mentioned there, she was 19 when she was captured. She's now 20, so she's obviously had to celebrate one birthday at least in captivity. When was the last time you had any news of her?
So the last real news that we've had of hers is, I believe it was like day 53 of the war when we had the previous release of hostages. So it's been well over a year. And what we knew at that point was what the released hostages who had been with her had told us about her whereabouts, that she had been kept in homes with families, that she had been in the tunnels. What she did get to eat on some days, what she didn't get to eat on other days. So we know about the conditions, we know about abuse, we know about, what you can imagine from hearing hostages tell what it's like, being held captive.
Has anyone told you anything, any of the authorities speaking to you about who's on the list of hostages that will be released in this first phase of an eventual ceasefire deal?
So what we know is from the media, actually, and I think we shouldn't know. I would hope that things would be kept confidential, and if anything, I don't like how on the media, everyone's like rushing to say this is the list and this is what we've heard, because we don't know what's accurate, and there's a lot of conflicting stories also between different media sources. I get my information from Israeli media, but also I follow your media, Al Arabiya, because we want to hear what other people are reporting, as well as the BBC and whatnot. Sometimes the reports are conflicting, which is really difficult for us families. And also when it's such sensitive negotiations, we don't want things to be leaked. We want the deal to go through. And so oftentimes we're worried that if things are leaked to the media, that it will cause either side, to change a position or to retract something that it had offered. So what we know is basically from the media, and I don't know how much of it is true or not true at this point. So we're still waiting for something official. The last I've heard, and again, this is from the media, is that the deal might be signed today or tomorrow or even as far as Friday. But again, I'll believe it when I see it, and I'll believe it when I see them home.
Yeah, indeed. Covering the story has been very confusing as well, because we keep being told that the deal is about to be signed, and then we're being told that there's some sort of a last-minute hitch or something along those lines, which has meant it's been delayed. So that word imminent, I agree, it's been overused with regards to this deal. Let's go back to talking about your cousin. She's been in captivity now for 15 months. And I'm just wondering, have you spoken to people about what it's going to be like for her, reintegrating her into a more normal daily routine? I mean, it's going to be really difficult, isn't it, for her?
Absolutely. I mean, we've never been in this position before. When I say we, I mean as a country, of receiving hostages that have been away for so long. We saw the psychological and physical trauma of the hostages that came back after 50 days. And so we have no idea what to expect. We do know, if you remember the 6 hostages that were executed in the tunnels, I think it was about 2 months ago at this point. So one of them, her name Edling, she was weighing only 53 pounds. That was what her body had weighed. She had lost like 40% of her body weight or something like that. And so we have no idea what kind of physical state they're going to be in. God forbid, if there was any sexual assault, what the results of that, might have been. I don't want to, go into detail. I think everybody can understand what I mean when I say that. The psychological trauma. And, even I've been speaking to my husband about this. I'm a cousin. I'm not, an immediate relative. I'm not her parents. I'm not her sisters or brothers. And so even I don't know, should I be, going to the hospital to visit her in the first coming days? Is that going to be too much? There's going to be so many people who want to see her. I'm dying to see her and hug her, but I want to do what's right for her. And so I know there's a lot of preparation right now in the hospitals in terms of the physical aspects and the mental aspects, but none of us really know what to expect at this point.
Sure, and I can see from looking online that you've been really active, trying to sort of keep up the pressure, I assume, to keep the attention shone on your cousin and the other hostages being held. Been doing lots of interviews. What other sorts of things have you been doing to try to make sure this story doesn't sort of fall out of the news cycle?
I mean, just keep doing what I'm doing and interviewing and sharing. And I think, this war really is such a tragedy from all sides. Every human life, any innocent human life that is lost, any person that is taken hostage, it is a tragedy. And we should hope, for all of us and for mankind, that in 2025, we shouldn't be seeing things like this happen. And I am a big advocate of peace. And so is Agam and our whole family. And we have always been advocates of peace. And it's really disturbing for me, and I've been using my platform to call this out. The people who have been protesting or demonstrating a certain thing around the world, how are they contributing to peace? The calls on the street are not for peace. When you ask for an immediate ceasefire, but you don't ask for the release of hostages, that is not a call for peace. You used the word truth when we began this interview. I don't see this even as a truth, because we should be not moving towards a ceasefire. We should be moving towards peace, real lasting peace, so that no innocent person needs to be harmed or killed in this region, and so that we can move forward to real peace with our neighbors. This is what we want. This is what we want as a nation. This is what I want as Ashley. And so I've been trying to use my platform to kind of bring that story back to, let's calm the hate. It is so easy to choose a side and to hate another side right now. But how is that helping? How is that helping either side? So I've been trying, it's difficult. It's difficult when you have a family member who has been taken hostage and, my husband's cousin was murdered at the Nova Festival. It is really difficult to choose the path of peace when you have been directly affected. But we are still choosing that path because we know that the only way my children will be safe, that I will be safe, that my grandchildren will be safe here in Israel is if we have peace. And that's what we want.
Yeah, you make some really good points there. And there are people in Israel who think that even this phased approach, these talks that are taking place now, which begin with a 16-day ceasefire, some hostages are released, then a more permanent arrangement, more hostages are released, and then a more lasting arrangement. But there are some people in Israel and probably in other parts of the world that don't think the Israeli government should be negotiating at all. I mean, what do you say to people who have that kind of opinion?
My master's degree happens to be in counterterrorism. And one of the first things we learned is that you don't negotiate with terrorists because you incentivize, keep doing it. You're going to get what you want. And so I completely understand. But there's theory and there's reality. And in reality, there is no other way. The military operations, how many out of 251 hostages, how many were we able to get back through military operations? I think it's been like 6. Something like that, maybe 7. There's, the only way we got people back was through a deal. And innocent people need to come home. There is no way that I, as an Israeli citizen, could live here and raise my children here, knowing that the government didn't do everything to bring the people home, right? It makes complete sense. How could you raise your children in a country where the government says, no, we don't negotiate, we don't do anything, that's it, like we'll just sacrifice our people? That doesn't work like that. And so I understand because, again, like I say, in theory, it's true. We shouldn't be negotiating with people who take people hostage. But our values as a country, Jewish values, means that we don't leave people behind and we bring everyone home. And I am completely opposed to the government officials that are saying that. I can understand when people go to the streets and protest. We live in a democracy and everybody has the right to say what they want. And I also agree completely with the family members who are protesting this deal because their family members are not on the initial list. I understand them. Nobody can judge a family member. Everybody's worried about what will happen, in the future, in the second phase of this deal that's supposed to happen. Will it happen? And it's supposed to be so far away still. Even if we're looking at this first list of the 33 hostages, and again, this is from what I'm seeing on the media, the last hostages in this first round will only come home in about 6 weeks. It's still a long way away of psychological trauma, of lack of food, of the conditions, of whatnot. And so I understand why there are people protesting against this deal. I can selfishly say that I'm in favor of it because it's not only my cousin. If we can bring one person home tomorrow, then I would be in favor of it. Those are my values.
Yeah, indeed. And you talk about this, agonizing experience for the captives, the psychological torture that they are undergoing, and also, for you as well, and for the extended family of each and every one of them who all have loved ones who want news. What will it mean for you to have Agam back home?
Well, first of all, I don't think we're going to stop there because we're going to have to continue fighting for the rest of the hostages to come home. That's first and foremost. But let's say once all the hostages are home, and once there is really a ceasefire, I think only then we as a country can rebuild. We can start healing from this trauma because as long as we have hostages, we can't heal from the trauma of October 7th. People say, last year sometimes to me, or in 2023. And I look and I go, what? Last year, 2023? We're still living it. It's not something that ended October 8th. And so, people have to understand there's still, I think it's about 60,000 or 80,000 displaced people in Israel that need to return to their homes, whether it's in the south or in the north. There's still so much healing that we need to get through. But as a nation, I think I'm kind of looking at this war almost like our second war of independence. We kind of have this feeling like everything is going to start new and again, and we have a new, an opportunity to make a real difference in the Middle East right now. And going back to what I was saying before, I am the biggest supporter of Abraham Accords. I would love to see more countries join. and I think that really is, we have this, after devastation, after war, that's when you make peace. And I really do think that we have a unique opportunity right now where we can bring real change, especially with the change in government in the United States and so forth. So as difficult as this past year has been, I am very optimistic for the future.
That's really great to hear. And just talking a little bit more about your cousin, Agam, she's presumably had to grow up a lot during these last 15 months in a way that she would never have imagined, no one would have imagined. But knowing her as you did, you last saw her 15 months ago, how do you think she will have coped under the circumstances that she's had to endure? What kind of a character is her? Tell us a little bit more about her.
Well, I'm sure she has a good sense of humor, and she's a funny person. So I'm sure she kind of, if she wasn't alone, if she was with other captives, I'm sure she kind of turned to kind of trying to make the best of the situation by trying to stay funny and optimistic, as a 20-year-old probably would. She's strong. She's very strong, and she has a very strong faith in God. We know from the released hostages that she was praying, for her on her food, on the little food she was receiving. She was praying to God all the time. And so I'm sure that faith has been keeping her strong. We have been praying. We have been sending her our prayers and our good energies. She's a very spiritual person, and I'm sure that has been helping her. But in terms of her character, there was that video that we saw from October 7th when they were taken, when you had the terrorists in front of them speaking to them, and they came to her and she had blood on her face, and they said to her, "Where are you from?" And she answered Tel Aviv, and that was like the only thing she answered. She was in complete shock. She's not even from Tel Aviv. I think she was in such shock she just said Tel Aviv. I think that, knowing her, I think that shock probably, went away after a day or two until she realized where she was. And she's strong. She's very strong, and she knows how to take care of herself and handle herself. And, she knows how to have a temper as well. And so I have faith in her that she knew how to take, she knows how to take care of herself, and she's strong. But after 15 months, you don't know. You don't know how your loved ones would react. You don't know how you would react. And so only once she'll be home, I'll be able to answer that question a little bit better after she shares with us her experience.
I can imagine how hard it's been. And just to sum up, really, does it feel sort of like you're trapped somewhere between hope and despair? Is that roughly how you'd say you felt at this particular moment?
You said it perfectly. We are trying to cling on to hope, like with our nails, you know what I mean? Like just to cling on to it, because it's so easy for it to slip away. But we're holding on. We're holding on.
Well, we wish you all very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. Ashley Waxman Bakshi, thank you very much indeed. Well, for more, we can speak now to Mogens Lykketoft, who is the former president of the UN General Assembly and who joins us from Copenhagen. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us, sir. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying that a deal is on the brink. It sounds like it's imminent, but it's a confusing picture. What do you make of these reports?
Well, I still think, do we dare hope that there will be a ceasefire in Palestine? I mean, this draft more or less has been there for many months. And in between, we have seen this extremely devastating campaign against the people and the whole infrastructure in Gaza. And as you mentioned, even now, at the brink of an agreement, some say, we see this murderous attack on civilians in Gaza going on.
Yeah, as you say, this deal has been on the table for months, since May of last year, in fact. And we've got these mediators from Qatar, Egypt and the United States, as well as representatives from Israel and Hamas involved. I mean, why do you think it's taking so long?
For me, it seems obvious that the reason for this cruel delay, I would say, is the internal disagreements in the Israeli government, where the hard-right anti-Palestinian parties have been demanding a continued campaign. And I observe that some of them still are saying the same things. So that's why we all are in doubt if it will actually happen, and if it will be the necessary opening for a huge humanitarian effort to the people of Gaza who have suffered so much, and the beginning of something like a political solution, at least that other forces will be present after some time in the Gaza Strip to protect the people there. I hope really that in continuation of an eventual ceasefire now, that both Arab countries and European countries will put enormous pressure on a solution where there will be protection force for the civilian people in Gaza.
Yeah, I mean, it's tremendous suffering, as you say. More than 46,000 people have been killed there in Gaza these last 15 months. Lots of obstacles on the route towards arriving at a deal. We keep being told there's this obstacle or that obstacle. Of all the obstacles, do you think there's one that's perhaps proven to be the most complicated, which is why we're just still not getting this firm answer that the deal has been struck?
Well, I see no more important reason than the belief in some part of the Israeli government that they need to make a total annihilation of Hamas in Gaza, and don't mind if their hostages will be brought out, as it has been, of course, a central effort all along between the negotiators to end this hostage crisis, but also free some of the very many thousand Palestinians that are jailed in camps in Israel. But I think there's another dimension on this, which is very, very important and frightening. That is the war, the ongoing war Israel is fighting against the United Nations with their ban on UNRWA. UNRWA is the best equipped organization to bring assistance to the suffering people in Gaza. And it's a very big problem in organizing the right and sufficient support that the best equipped organization, the most experienced organization in this are hindered in working for the war. And I think also there should be a much stronger pressure from the international community with the Arab and Muslim world and Europeans in front to change that decision of banning UNRWA. It's a very, very sad and dangerous for the people of Gaza if this happens.
Sure, and let's just go back to the deal itself. It's going to be a phased deal, we're told, at least 2 phases, as far as I can understand. What's your understanding of how a phased deal will work and what it will entail?
Of course, the risk of a phased deal is that both parties can jump out and say all the assumed conditions are not fulfilled, and the fighting is starting again. That's the risk. So we really need the whole international community to keep the parties to this agreement, to both the content and spirit of the agreement, so that we avoid new further killings in Palestine.
Sure, and okay, when phase 1 is over, I think 6 weeks go by, then it's phase 2. I mean, are there any significant differences between these 2 phases?
I haven't seen all the details of this, and I think none of us are quite sure what the phasing is. But of course, the important thing will be that there is an immediate access for humanitarian assistance, and there's a a phased withdrawal of Israeli military from the Gaza Strip.
Okay, and obviously once a permanent ceasefire is arrived at, and there's this permanent withdrawal of Israeli soldiers, we think, what happens then? Because, I mean, there's going to be a huge rebuilding operation in Gaza, and that's going to cost billions of dollars. Where's that money going to come from?
Yes, that's a very good question, because we seldom saw such a total destruction of a society like what has happened in Gaza. I think it's 70–80% of all buildings destroyed, all infrastructure, water, electricity. It will take very many billions, as you rightly pointed out, to make just a minimum of workability to a civil society in Gaza again. And I hope that the international community will stand up. I hope that the Arab nations in solidarity will join here, not only with financial support. I think the international organizations, we have international banks and so on, have to contribute. But I think also it's important that there is, as I understand it, the willingness from major countries in the Arab world to supply kind of a protective force for Gaza at the end of the process. But I'm very much in doubt if that will be accepted by the Israelis. I don't think it's included in any kind of agreement right now.
And of course, this 15-month-long war in Gaza has resulted in a lot of spillover. We've seen violence in the West Bank. We've seen flare-ups in Lebanon, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, as well as huge protests in lots of other countries as well. How much of an impact do you think a peace deal will have on the broader Middle East region?
I think there is, again, there is a huge responsibility on major Arab countries to keep on insisting of the respect for Palestinian rights, to keep on insisting that it's not acceptable from international law that Israel is annexing parts of the occupied territories, and in that way keep open a road for Palestinian self-determination in one kind or another. Because there is a military conflict, a cruel one, terrible one, going on right now, but there is a very, very long road to go to establish equal rights, human rights perspective, and livable conditions for the Palestinian people. And the United Nations will have to play a major role here, and that's why it's so unlucky and so unacceptable that UNRWA is banned from the Israeli side.
And just lastly, I mean, what's your overall feeling? Are you optimistic that a deal will be struck and that Gaza will be able to rebuild?
We have to hope for that. I can't see where those people living under these terrible conditions should be able to go elsewhere. We have to support them, and we have to insist that this is their land and it has to be rebuilt. But it will be a long and painful process. And I think that in the balance between Arab-Palestinian priorities and Israeli power, it's very, very important that both, as I said repeatedly, both Arab countries and European countries weigh in on insisting on the rights for Palestinians, which are enshrined in any kind of UN resolution we have made over the past 80 years.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Former President of the United Nations General Assembly, Mogens Lykketoft. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, ending more than 2 years of political deadlock, Lebanon has a new prime minister. Nawaf Salam now has the task of forming a government, while the presiding judge at the International Court of Justice in The Hague. Salam was appointed by Lebanon's newly elected president, Joseph Aoun, after securing the support of 84 of the 128 MPs. Well, for more on this, we can cross now to Lebanon and speak to Diana Menhem, a Lebanese political strategist. Thank you so much for joining us, Diana. Lebanon's new Prime Minister designate, Nawaf Salam, is, of course, in that job now. Is he the right man for the job, do you think?
Hi, Tom. Happy to be with you. Definitely, Nawaf Salam is the right man for a job. Actually, I can't think of a better person to take on this job. He's one of the best since a very long time to take on this position in Lebanon. He's a jurist. He was the president of the International Court of Justice. He actually just resigned from his position to take on his new responsibilities as prime minister. He's also a very well-versed diplomat. He was Lebanon's representative to the United Nations from the years 2007 until 2017. And he's also an academic. He used to teach for a very long while at universities. He actually was my professor back when I was a student at the American University of Beirut. He's known for his integrity. He is known for his principled position, and he is known to be a reformist. So lots of hope for the Lebanese with the prime minister. The first indication of what he plans to do, of his policy priorities, was given yesterday in his speech. And this is a speech that met the expectations of the Lebanese, that gave a very clear idea over what he thinks is important in the upcoming phase. Lots of priorities, including restoring Lebanese sovereignty, kickstarting reforms, kickstarting growth after a very long period of stagnation, and of course, leading on a massive reconstruction effort after the war. I hope that he will be able to deliver, but until now, all the ingredients are in the right place.
Sure. I mean, everything you say is extremely, it paints a glowing picture of him. And it's really rare, isn't it, in Lebanese politics to find someone that everyone rallies around. Now, President Joseph Aoun has chosen, as we've been saying, Nawaf Salam to fill this role. Some saying that is a blow to Hezbollah. But I'm wondering why they're saying that, because, of course, the Prime Minister of Lebanon is always going to be a Sunni. Why are they saying it's a blow to Hezbollah? It's
a posture, right? There's no doubt that this new leadership, be it the president or the prime minister, are heralding in a new era for Lebanon, a new repositioning for Lebanon in the region. This is a glimpse of what political life might look like outside of the so-called axis of resistance. You can feel that people are hopeful, you can feel happiness, and you can feel relief on the streets. It's not a blow in a sense to Hezbollah, but yes, it signals a repositioning. This is not the prime minister that they would have wanted. This is not the president that they would have wanted. But for the constituency of Hezbollah and for the Amal movement, I think these are the right people in the right places, because these will be the people who will be able to lead on the reconstruction effort in the upcoming phase, to make sure that people will go back to their homes the fastest possible. And these are the people who will make sure to uphold the ceasefire agreement that was signed with Israel in order to prevent us from sliding into further wars in the future. But of course, we should be wary of over-optimism. This comes with a lot of challenges. The first immediate challenge definitely will be the formation of a government. Definitely Hezbollah and Amal movement will try to capitalize on their political capital in order to try to get as many gains in this government as possible. There are key positions like that of the finance minister that they will try to hold on to. They've had it for so long. So this is a very big challenge in this phase. The second challenge is for this government to align on a common roadmap. This will also be a big milestone. And of course, after that implementation, it's very important also for Hezbollah and Amal movement, but also their allies, not to have a blocking third in this cabinet, because it will mean that they will be able to break the cabinet at any moment.
Yeah, so you're making it sound like there's been a significant shift in power there in Lebanon, the balance of power. One of the things that we've heard Premier Salam saying is, my hands are extended to everyone, and that's seen as being a message to Hezbollah. What sort of things can he do to stop them from feeling excluded?
I mean, both the president and the prime minister were very clear, and also other political leaders in the country have been repeating this message of, we are ready to cooperate, we are ready to work together with Hezbollah. Hezbollah has a huge constituency in the country, and no one can cancel them out. What can be done in order to support reintegration of Hezbollah as a political party into political life in Lebanon is, first of all, make sure that they are fairly represented in this government. Of course, if they want to, they have signaled, until the moment they have signaled that they want to, but also in the upcoming phase, lead a fair reconstruction effort that will help get the constituents of Hezbollah and Amal movement back to their homes the fastest possible. There, of course, will be a lot of political files. There will be a lot of appointments in the upcoming period. And it's important to also here take into consideration not being over-aggressive against them. And also, there are elections that are coming up. There's a huge discussion on the upcoming electoral law. It's also important to make sure that this will be a fair electoral law that will represent all the Lebanese.
Okay, and just lastly, Diana, does it feel to you as a Lebanese national like this is the beginning of a new era for Lebanon after what's been a very, very difficult 4 or 5 years?
Absolutely. A new era. Something to look forward to. I haven't had this much hope in a political leadership in the country since I was a kid, probably. Since the civil war, we haven't had such a strong duo in the leadership. All the Lebanese are very excited about it.
Okay, well, let's hope everything works out for the best. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us, Diana Menhem. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, turning our eye to the wildfires in Southern California, which are now known to have claimed the lives of at least 25 people. Those fires have also scorched an area the size of Washington, D.C. Well, as if the situation wasn't already tragic enough for people in those affected areas, now a looting spree has broken out in some evacuated areas. Well, police have announced charges against 10 people accused of burglary and looting. Police also say there have been cases of people impersonating firefighters in order to access the evacuated areas. Well, around 400 National Guard troops have been deployed to counter looters. The LA County Sheriff, Robert Luna, says that strict measures are being taken to deal with them.
Because we've seen hour and hour of people in our community suffering, losing their homes, losing their property. And just like everybody else, people are saying, hey, this is the reason I don't want to evacuate. I don't want to be victimized again. This is a strong message from all of us that we are here. So whether we are talking about burglary, looting, we're talking about scams, we're talking about the misuse of drones, whatever it is, we're going to get you. Do not make this worse than it already is.
The LA County Sheriff speaking there. Well, as local law enforcement and the California National Guard work to protect homes in the wildfire evacuation zones from looters, 2 local district attorneys are calling for more severe punishments for those caught looting. They've proposed legislation to make looting during a local emergency and felony punishable with a state prison sentence. Well, for more, we can speak now to Jerry Edling, editor for the KNX news radio station in Los Angeles. Jerry, great to have you back with us again here on Al Arabiya News. There are reports that high winds are threatening to reverse some of the hard-won progress in containing the fires. Just tell us what the latest is.
Yeah. There is definitely the threat of high wind. The Santa Ana winds have been touch and go lately. Firefighters did catch a break over the last couple of days, but now we have word that they may be a bit resurgent today. So once again, a red flag warning is in effect, and everything is very kind of tenuous right now. And as you mentioned, the looting problem is just more aggravation, and although that kind of minimizes it, but another headache for firefighters and for law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, as if it wasn't bad enough to have to evacuate your home, or maybe worse, to see it reduced to rubble, and now to have it looted as well. While you were talking, we were looking at surveillance video of looters in action. How widespread is the looting at this stage?
Well, it's very widespread. There have been incidents all the way through the fire, even when the fire was very close. But California has a history of this kind of thing. It resurged a couple of years ago. They had a lot of smash and grab looting in department stores, and that was blamed in some quarters by lax legislation. And so this has been a recurring problem in different sectors. I mean, this is in a fire zone. We had it in department stores before, very high-end department stores. And it just so happens that this fire came in one of the toniest neighborhoods in Los Angeles. So naturally, looters took advantage of it, and now law enforcement and public officials are calling for even life in prison. And that could happen under existing law, because California has a 3 strikes law, and a lot of these people are convicted felons already. So they hit a 3rd strike, and they're in prison for the rest of their lives. So California is kind of moving to bone that up a little bit and send the warning to looters that it will not be tolerated.
Yeah, as you say, we're talking here, we're looking as well at pictures of what were multi-million-dollar homes. Some very affluent areas have been affected by the wildfires. And it is incredible to see the techniques being used by these criminals, dressing up in some cases, we understand, as first responders or firefighters. Is that something you've been hearing about?
Yeah, that's happened in a lot of cases, and it's very widespread in that area, because keep in mind that the fire spread from Pacific Palisades to Malibu and literally covered what you might call the affluent crescent going up the coast, Pacific Coast Highway. And I believe Malibu was the site of one of those costumed looters. And, in all the confusion right now, it's kind of like a war zone, and you have the fog of war, literally, through the smoke in this fire. And it's very easy for a looter to get in with only sort of a hat and a raincoat or whatever, and move in and strike these very affluent homes. So it is widespread, and it's catching almost as badly as the fire itself.
Yeah, indeed. And I mean, is there a feeling that the authorities are doing enough to protect people's homes?
Say again, sorry?
Is there a sense that the authorities are doing enough to protect people's homes?
It all depends on who you speak with. There are a lot of people who have been critical of public officials, particularly on the right, public officials in terms of their handling of forestry management and preparing for the fires. So And then Mayor Karen Bass of Los Angeles, of course, was in a conference in Africa when the whole thing broke out. And so she's been under a critical eye. So for the most part, yeah, there is a lot of criticism of public officials, and it doesn't show any signs of letting up. Another thing they were concerned about is the lack of water, because at one point firefighters almost ran out of water in fighting the fires. So we can expect that to continue until they get sort of more of a master plan on how to deal with future fires.
Yeah, and you mentioned the fog of war and the confusion, but adding to the confusion seems to be information and misinformation. One of the rows playing out on social media, we've got the tech billionaire Elon Musk accusing Governor of California Gavin Newsom of, quote, encouraging looting by lying. He says that he's somehow decriminalizing looting. At least he amplified a tweet that suggested that. I mean, how widespread is this type of narrative?
I'd say, depending on who you speak to, it's very widespread. I mean, California Governor Gavin Newsom has been sort of a lightning rod. He was during the campaign, during the Trump campaign, he actually offered to debate and all that, and he's been seen as a possible Democratic presidential hopeful. So he's kind of a weather vane as to criticism of handling the fires and handling the looting. And we also had a district attorney who was voted out of office, and he was widely criticized for lax enforcement of laws, especially for drug offenses and things like that. So there's a whole climate of people wanting, or specifically more conservatives, people wanting more stricter law enforcement, and they're saying enough is enough, and it's falling on Gavin Newsom's head. It's falling on pretty much the local fire chief, and so it's going to be raging as much as the fires in the coming days.
Yeah, and of course there are all sorts of conspiracy theories doing the rounds as well. Alex Jones, for example, has put up this idea that the fires are all part of a globalist plot, he says, to wage economic warfare and deindustrialize the United States. And on that one, Elon Musk replied, true. What are some of the more far out there theories you're hearing? I mean, you're hearing, or perhaps you don't pay any attention to conspiracy theories, but have you heard anything that's stood out for you?
You can pretty much get. I haven't seen all the conspiracy theories, but I do know that they run the gamut. Everything from global warming, attacking global warming as a cause, and somehow all the officials have gotten together to sort of exacerbate the wildfires to make the point that global warming is real. And of course, they don't believe it's real. So it really, the fog of war is a fog of disinformation to a certain extent. And it's, you can almost just imagine a conspiracy theory, and it's probably already been circulated on social media. Sort of there's nothing new under the sun.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. Jerry Edling, editor for the KNX News radio station in Los Angeles. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
Well, that is all we have time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, goodbye.